Don't touch my mother! A black girl silences a racist flight attendant when she learns her mother is the CEO of an airline. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The cabin was calm until that moment. Rows of passengers sank into quiet hums, overhead lights soft like a late afternoon sun, and then a sharp voice cut through the air. "Mom, you can't sit here. This seat is for paying passengers." The words hit like turbulence. The woman in yellow, Ava Robinson, didn't answer. Her lips trembled, not from fear but from confusion. She couldn't hear the words, only feel the weight of them through the vibration in the air. She looked up, eyes steady, asking with her hands what the flight attendant meant. The attendant didn't understand sign language. She just frowned, then did something worse. She reached out. Fingers closed around Ava's wrist as if she were restraining a child. And that's when the child spoke. A tiny voice, trembling but furious, pierced the hush. "Don't touch my mother." Every head turned. The little girl, 5 years old, puffs of curls bouncing, barrettes catching the cabin light, was standing on her seat now, pointing straight at the attendant. Her voice didn't echo, it commanded, "Take your hand off her." Passengers froze mid-breath. The aisle seemed to narrow, trapping the heat between disbelief and shame. Somewhere in row 4, a man muttered, "What the hell is happening?" Another lifted his phone but hesitated, unsure if filming felt right or wrong. The flight attendant blinked, startled, her authority cracking for the first time. "Sweetheart, please sit down." But the girl wouldn't. She planted both feet on the cushion, chest rising, tears in her eyes, yet voice steady with fire. "You're mean to her because she can't hear you." Gasps rippled through the rows. The mother, Ava, placed her hand gently on her daughter's arm, trying to calm her, but the girl shook her head, still pointing. Her little hands shook, yet her gaze never faltered. The flight attendant straightened, mask of professionalism slipping. "She's disturbing other passengers," she said loudly to the air, to no one, to herself. A man 2 rows back muttered, "Disturbing? She's defending." Ava finally understood what was happening. Not the words, but the rhythm of humiliation. She'd felt it before. At restaurants, at boardrooms, at doors that opened for everyone except her. But this time was different. Because this time, her daughter saw it too. The girl turned, scanning the cabin, her small voice trembling. "She didn't do anything wrong. She paid. She's my mom." A couple in business class leaned forward, unsure what to say. The hum of the engines became a low, uneasy growl. And then the flight attendant made her final mistake. She crouched down, tone patronizing, lips tight in that careful corporate smile. "Sweetheart," she said slowly, "your mommy needs to show her boarding pass, or she'll have to leave." The girl's eyes widened, fury blooming like thunder. She pointed again, this time shaking. "My mom doesn't need to show anything. She owns the plane." The attendant froze, half smile fading. The passengers gasped in one collective breath. Somewhere, a phone camera finally clicked on. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Ava. The attendant's hand lingered in midair, unsure whether to retreat or defend. Ava sat still, eyes lowered but heart steady. The little girl leaned forward, tears welling, voice cracking but still full of defiance. You hurt her for nothing. And in that instant, the cabin wasn't just an airplane, it was a courtroom. Every passenger became a witness, every whisper a verdict waiting to be spoken. The flight attendant stepped back, mumbling something about protocol, about misunderstanding. But the silence that followed wasn't mercy, it was judgment. Ava reached for her daughter, pulled her close. The child's breathing slowed, her small hand gripping her mother's tightly. No words were needed between them. They both knew this moment wasn't over. Not yet. Because in less than 10 minutes, the world would learn who Ava Robinson really was. and the skies she built would never look the same again. Hours earlier, before the shouting, before the trembling hands, Ava Robinson had walked through the jet bridge like any other traveler. No security escort, no announcement. No one stopping to ask for an autograph or a handshake. She wanted it that way. Her tailored yellow blouse hid the discreet vibration sensor clipped beneath her sleeve, her link to sound. She used it not to hear, but to feel. The thrum of engines, the murmurs of life. For a woman who couldn't hear the world, she had built an empire that moved it. Skylink Airlines, her airline. But today wasn't about power. It was about seeing how ordinary people were treated when no one recognized them. So she booked a random domestic flight Miami to Denver under her own name, but without any corporate title attached. A silent audit. Her daughter, Layla, had insisted on coming. "Mom, you always say you need to see people for who they are." She'd signed with clumsy but eager little hands. "So let's go see them." Ava smiled, proud. The girl was only 6, but already fluent in the language that the world ignored. Together they boarded, hand in hand, 2 travelers among hundreds. No fanfare, no privilege. They found their seats in row 5A and 5B premium, but not first class. Ava preferred it that way. Close enough to observe, far enough to stay unseen. She watched the crew greet passengers, watched how kindness sometimes had rank, how smiles shifted based on skin tone, accent, clothing. Her assistant, Daniel, had offered to arrange a full inspection team, but she refused. "If they know I'm coming," she had signed, "they'll behave. I need truth, not performance." Daniel had nodded reluctantly. "Then at least carry your ID badge." Ava slipped it into her tablet case, just in case the truth turned dangerous. The first hint of it came when she tried to store her bag. The overhead bin above her row was half empty, but the flight attendant, Karen White, blocked her gently at first, then firmly. "Those compartments are for premium passengers only," Karen said without looking up from her checklist. Ava pointed to her seat, signed slowly, "I'm in this row." Karen frowned, misreading the gesture as defiance. "Ma'am, if you can't follow simple instructions, I'll have to call someone to assist you." "Zero questions." Ava hesitated, fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. She wanted to explain, but the words she couldn't speak hung like static between them. That's when Layla stepped in, voice clear but soft. "She's deaf," she said. "She's not ignoring you." Karen blinked, expression tightening. "I understand," she replied too quickly, that practiced smile returning. "Then she should have informed us earlier." Ava exhaled, lowering her eyes. She knew this script. The subtle blame, the quiet condescension. She placed her bag under the seat, thanked the attendant with a small nod, and sat down. As passengers continued boarding, the hum of conversation filled the cabin, muffled but visible to Ava in the way lips moved, shoulders turned, laughter flickered. She read people the way others read headlines. She noticed how Karen's posture softened for a white couple in row 6. How her tone brightened when she greeted the man in a suit, but flattened when speaking to a young black woman boarding behind him. The same patterns she had studied her whole life, bias hidden beneath etiquette. Layla tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "You okay, Mommy?" Ava smiled faintly, brushing her daughter's curls back. She signed, "Just watching." In truth, she was taking mental notes, not for a report, for something deeper. Because to Ava Robinson, injustice wasn't theoretical, it was lived memory. She remembered being 16, denied a job at an airport kiosk because guests might feel uncomfortable talking to someone who can't hear. She remembered crying in a restroom stall, vowing she'd never let that silence define her. Now, 30 years later, she owned the airports those kiosks sat in. Yet prejudice still found her even when hidden behind a smile and a uniform. The engines roared softly as the last passengers took their seats. Karen walked down the aisle, chin high, eyes sweeping like a border guard. When she reached Ava's row again, she paused just long enough to glance at Layla, then the mother. "Let's keep things calm today," she said. Layla frowned. "She's not doing anything." But the attendant was already moving on. Ava inhaled deeply. Her pulse matched the hum of the plane steady, patient, waiting. She didn't know it yet, but within the next hour, this quiet observation would ignite into confrontation. and the world would see how easily silence is mistaken for submission until silence learns to speak through power. Seatbelt signs glowed amber. The cabin lights dimmed. The plane began its slow climb through clouds, and for a few minutes, everything seemed ordinary again. Layla pressed her face to the window, whispering about the tiny houses below, her voice soft, almost musical. Ava smiled until the shadow returned. Karen, the flight attendant, approached their row again, holding a clipboard and a frown sharp enough to cut air. "Ma'am," she said loudly, as if volume could replace patience. "I need to verify your boarding information." Ava looked up, puzzled. She had already shown her ticket twice before boarding. She tapped her chest gently, then signed. "Ticket?" Karen sighed, exasperated. "Oh, for goodness sake." Then, slower, exaggerated. "Your ticket." She mimed the shape of a paper rectangle, waving her hand like she was talking to a child. A few passengers turned. Layla's small hands clenched the armrest. "She already gave it to you," she said. Karen ignored her. "Sweetheart, let the adults handle this." Ava opened her tablet, pulled up the digital boarding pass, and held it out. Karen didn't take it. Instead, she looked at the mother's trembling hands, then at her face, and asked, "Did someone help you book this? We've had cases where we misunderstand our seat policies." Layla stood. "She didn't misunderstand anything." Karen's tone sharpened. "Sit down, young lady. If you's with mine." The girl didn't move. "You're treating her like she's stupid. She's not." Whispers began to ripple down the aisle. A man in a blue hoodie leaned forward to another passenger. "Is she serious right now?" Someone else muttered. "This is getting ugly." Karen crossed her arms. "If your mother can't communicate properly, we'll have to relocate her near a crew seat for safety." The cooling fivers. "Command." Ava felt the words before she saw them, her daughter's face shifting, the passengers' jaws tightening, the pity in their eyes. The vibration through the floor told her that tone, patronizing, final, the sound of someone erasing your dignity with rules. Layla's voice cracked. "You can't move her! That's our seat!" Karen forced a smile, the kind that hides irritation under fake empathy. "We'll handle this quietly, okay? There's no need to make a scene." But the scene was already happening. A tall man across the aisle, mid-30s, calm but firm, spoke up. "She's not making a scene. You are." Karen turned sharply. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." He shrugged. "It does when it smells like discrimination." The murmur grew louder. Passengers shifting, eyes narrowing. The air was no longer calm. It was electric, charged, waiting for someone to cross the line completely. Ava placed a hand over Layla's, her gestures slow, soothing. "It's okay," she signed. "Sit down." But her daughter shook her head, tears welling. "No, Mom, it's not okay." Karen rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath just loud enough for the nearest passengers to hear. "Always the drama. If." That did it. The man in the blue hoodie stood. "Lady, you might want to think about what you just said." Karen's professional mask slipped. "Sir, please remain seated or I'll call security when we land." Lila's lip quivered. "Why do you hate us?" she whispered. Ava couldn't hear the words, but she could feel the silence that followed. Silence so heavy it pressed against the walls of the cabin. Karen straightened her jacket, suddenly self-conscious. "We're done here. Just make sure she doesn't block the aisle." She turned, heading toward the front, but her voice carried back, muttered, careless. "Unbelievable. Every time, it's the same attitude." The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew what she meant. Everyone, except the one woman who couldn't hear it. Ava looked at her daughter's trembling lips and knew something terrible had been said. She didn't need sound to feel insult. She had lived long enough to recognize it by vibration, by the weight of every stare that followed. She turned to comfort Layla, but the girl was already unbuckling her seatbelt, standing again. "I'm telling them what you said!" she shouted toward the aisle. A hush fell. Karen froze mid-step, her confidence flickering. In that suspended moment, the hum of engines became the only witness to a quiet injustice ready to explode. Ava reached out to her daughter, her touch gentle but firm. She shook her head slowly, eyes full of patience and purpose. Because Ava wasn't planning to shout. She was planning to show them, and the sky itself was about to listen. For a long minute, no one moved. The plane hummed, steady, indifferent like the world, pretending not to see what it just saw. Karen straightened her uniform, regaining the brittle poise of someone who still believed she owned the moment. "That's enough," she said, voice sharp again. "Let's calm down before this gets out of hand." But it already had. The cabin was no longer a cabin. It was a quiet courtroom full of witnesses who couldn't stay silent much longer. From row 7, a young flight attendant, the trainee, rose halfway from her jump seat. She was small, maybe mid-20s, with a nervous grace and dark hair tied back neatly. Her name tag read MIA Tran. She had been watching the whole time, heart pounding with each word her senior uttered. She wasn't supposed to intervene. Trainees were told to observe, not participate, but every instinct screamed that what she was observing wasn't training, it was cruelty. Mia took a breath, stepped into the aisle. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "I think there's been a mistake." Karen turned, eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" Mia's voice trembled but held. "The passenger in 5 of her name's Robinson, right? Ava Robinson?" "Ava. Ava." Karen blinked. "Yes, that's what's on the manifest." Mia swallowed hard. "Then the system's not wrong. She's on the Skylink Platinum Board list." A few passengers gasped. The tall man across the aisle sat up straighter. "Wait board list? Like executive board?" Karen's face drained of color, then hardened again. "That's impossible. Those records must be outdated." "No, ma'am." Mia shook her head. "The list updates every week. I saw the roster this morning during the pre-flight briefing." Karen's tone iced over. "Trainee, I suggest you stay in your lane." But the damage was done. A murmur rippled through the cabin like a rising tide. The woman this crew had mocked might actually be someone important, someone powerful. Layla looked up at Mia, her small face lit with cautious hope. "You know my mom?" Mia smiled gently. "Not personally, but I've read about her." She glanced toward Karen, voice steadying. "Ava Robinson is one of Skylink's founders." Karen forced a laugh thin, brittle. "Sweetheart, our founders don't fly commercial with 6-year-olds and tote bags." But she could feel the ground shifting beneath her words. The authority she had wielded moments ago was slipping like sand through her fingers. The man in the blue hoodie spoke again, this time louder. "So you've been harassing your boss?" A chuckle spread through the back rows short, disbelieving, then building into whispers. Someone muttered, "This is wild." Another voice, from behind, "If that's true, she's done." Karen spun toward Mia. "You don't know what you're talking about. Those rosters are confidential. If you so much as repeat this again, you'll what?" the man interrupted. "Demote her for telling the truth?" Mia's pulse hammered, but she didn't back down. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," she said, her voice trembling yet clear. "I just think Mrs. Robinson deserves respect. Even if she weren't the CEO." That line hit harder than any accusation. Even the murmuring stopped. Ava watched, eyes wide, trying to read the shape of the conversation through lips and gestures. She didn't know exactly what was being said, but she could tell the rhythm had changed, the tone had softened. Her daughter leaned in, whispering fast. "Mom, she's helping. She said you're on some list." Ava blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry. She had built a company designed to prevent moments like this. Yet here she was, being rescued by a trainee, someone who still believed fairness could exist at 30,000 feet. Karen clenched her clipboard so tight her knuckles whitened. "Fine. I'll confirm it myself." She stormed toward the galley, radio in hand, muttering into her headset. Passengers exchanged looks. Some pulled out their phones, not to film but to prepare. Everyone sensed what was coming. Mia turned back to Ava and knelt slightly beside her seat. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "You shouldn't have been treated like that." Ava nodded, touching her hand in gratitude. Layla beamed through tears. "Thank you. Where those?" The engines hummed louder, as if echoing the shift in the air. Up front, Karen's voice crackled faintly from her radio, confirming, "Ava Robinson, ID 0027, no way." A murmur from the cockpit, too faint for passengers to hear, then silence. When Karen returned to the aisle, her steps were slower, her confidence gone, her face pale. She didn't meet Ava's eyes, but Layla stood again, voice trembling with both fury and pride. "I told you," she said. "My mom owns the plane." Wise. The cabin erupted not in laughter, not in noise, but in awe. And for the first time that flight, someone other than the engines carried the sound of truth. Karen froze mid-aisle, gripping her clipboard like it might anchor her back into control. The color had drained from her face, but her pride wouldn't let her stop. She turned, voice brittle. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "Anyone could fake a name in the system. I've seen it before." Her words hung in the air, trembling with desperation. Layla's fists clenched at her sides. "You're lying," she said, her voice cracking. "You just don't want to say sorry." Karen's jaw tightened. "Watch your tone, young lady. We don't allow disruptive passengers on Skylink flights." That word disruptive was the spark. Ava flinched as if she could feel the vibration of insult in the metal floor beneath her feet. She couldn't hear the words, but she could see the rhythm of cruelty forming again in the attendant's mouth. The same shapes, the same patterns she had seen all her life. The cabin went still. Then Karen reached for Ava's arm, again an impatient gesture, a command masked as assistance. "Ma'am, I'm asking you to move to another seat until we clear this up." But she shouldn't have touched her, because that was the moment the world slowed down. Ava's eyes lifted, glassy but fierce. Her daughter's voice echoed somewhere distant. "Don't touch her!" And everything blurred into motionless silence. The hum of the engines faded into memory, and memory became the hum. She was 16 again, standing in an airport in Atlanta, holding a letter of acceptance to her first summer internship. She had worn her Sunday dress, pressed, careful, proud. When she reached the counter to check in, the woman behind it never looked up, just said, "This line's for staff, sweetheart." "You don't belong here," Ava had tried to explain, to sign, to point to the badge clipped to her dress. The woman frowned. "I don't speak that," she said, waving her away. 2 security guards escorted her out before she could even protest. She'd stood outside that terminal for 2 hours, tears burning in silence, watching planes take off, each one a promise she would one day reclaim. Now, 30 years later, another uniformed woman was making the same mistake. Her daughter's cry snapped her back to the present. "Stop it! Don't touch my mom!" Ava rose slowly from her seat, calm but unyielding. Her posture alone commanded the space. She met Karen's eyes, reading her lips carefully. Then, with deliberate precision, she signed a single phrase, "You will regret this." Karen blinked, confused but unsettled by the certainty in Ava's gaze. "Are you threatening me?" she barked. Mia stepped forward from behind the beverage cart. "Mayim, please stop," she pleaded softly. "She's not threatening you, she's warning you." The man in the hoodie muttered, "More like giving you a chance to stop digging your own grave." Karen's chest rose and fell too fast. "Everyone stay seated," she ordered, but her voice cracked halfway through. "I'm contacting security when we land." Layla looked around, trembling but brave. "You don't need to call anyone," she said. "My mom already owns this plane." Somewhere near the back, a passenger whispered, "She's right." Ava reached for her tablet case, fingers steady now, the calm of a woman who had been tested too many times to tremble anymore. She slid it open, revealing a black leather folder embossed with gold Skylink's crest. Karen took a step back. What is that?" Layla lifted the folder high, her small arms shaking but proud. "Proof," she said. The aisle went dead silent. Even the seatbelt sign chimed once and then faded, as if the plane itself were listening. Ava's lips moved slowly, her words silent but sharp enough for everyone to read. "I built this company to make people feel safe. And yet, even here, I'm still a threat to you." Karen's breath caught. "That's not fair," she whispered. "I didn't mean—" But it was too late. The line had already been crossed, and every witness in the cabin knew it. Mia looked to the other crew members. "We need to fix this right now," she said firmly, "before it becomes something we can't undo." The older attendant shook her head. "No, it's already something we can't undo. Everyone face." Ava closed the folder and sat back down, her movements deliberate, final. Her daughter climbed into her lap, still shaking. Ava brushed her curls gently, signing, "It's okay, I've got us." Karen hovered there, frozen between apology and panic. The cabin's silence pressed down like judgment from the clouds themselves. And as the engines carried them higher, every soul on board understood something irreversible had begun. The next time Ava Robinson spoke, she wouldn't need to raise her voice. She'd raise the entire sky. For almost a full minute, no one spoke. Karen stood in the aisle breathing, shallow clipboard pressed tight against her chest, while the rest of the cabin waited to see what Ava would do next. But Ava didn't move. She simply reached into her tablet case, tapped the screen once, and turned it toward her daughter. The little girl nodded, understanding instantly. Mom says, "It's time," she whispered. She pressed a green icon. A soft tone rang from the tablet, 3 low pulses that blended into the engine's hum. From somewhere across the cabin, Mia's crew intercom lit up. The message scrolled across the display. Skylink internal alert. Protocol 7. Executive override initiated. Karen frowned. "What is that? Some kind of prank?" The man in the hoodie chuckled. "You might want to sit down before you find out." Ava remained silent, calm as ever. Her eyes locked on the flight attendant with the stillness of a storm building just below the clouds. Then, from the tablet's speaker, a voice came through steady, professional, unmistakably authoritative. "Miss Robinson, this is Daniel Cruz." Layla leaned forward so the microphone could catch her voice. "She says a flight attendant grabbed her and called her a liar." A murmur rippled down the aisle. Karen's head whipped around. Who is this?" Daniel's tone never wavered. "This is the Skylink corporate command channel, and the person you're speaking to." He paused as if savoring the moment. "Is your CEO?" The cabin erupted in stunned whispers. Karen blinked rapidly. No, that's not possible. She can't." Daniel cut her off, voice cool as steel. "Miss White, you're being recorded under internal compliance review. Please step back from the passenger immediately." Her jaw dropped. "You can't talk to me like that. I'm in control of this aircraft." "Incorrect," Daniel said. "She is." Every head turned to Ava. She hadn't flinched once. Her silence carried more authority than shouting ever could. She lifted her hand, signing calmly to her daughter. "Tell them to remain seated," Layla relayed. "Please stay calm, everyone. My mom's handling it." Even the captain's voice came faintly over the intercom, hesitant, respectful. Confirmed. Corporate just patched through. Miss Robinson, we're standing by." The atmosphere shifted instantly. What had started as humiliation was now an inversion of power so complete it made the air itself vibrate. Karen stumbled back a step, face pale, her authority unraveling in front of 100 silent witnesses. Ava reached for her stylus, typed 3 words onto the tablet, and turned it toward the trembling attendant. "You crossed a line." She didn't shout. She didn't gloat. She just looked her straight in the eye, unblinking. And for the first time that flight, Karen White finally understood this woman hadn't been powerless. She'd been merciful. The cabin was silent except for the soft drone of the engines. Even that hum seemed to bow under the weight of what had just been said. Karen stood frozen mid-aisle, clipboard limp in her hand. Daniel's voice returned through the tablet, calm, deliberate. "Miss Robinson, all systems confirm your override. The flight crew is now under executive supervision. Do you wish to proceed?" Ava nodded once. Her daughter translated in a trembling whisper. "She says yes. Have her one." Layla's voice was small, but every word cut through the air like thunder. Karen took a step back. "This is insane. She can't possibly." Ava's hand lifted slightly, not to silence her, but to reclaim the space that had been stolen. With a slow motion, she signed to Layla again. "Mom says, tell her who she's talking to." The little girl turned, voice clear, eyes steady. "My mom is Ava Robinson. She owns Skylink Airlines." The words hit like a lightning strike. Gasps broke out in waves through the rows. Someone whispered, "No way." Another muttered, "That's her? I saw her on Forbes." Karen's mouth fell open. The blood drained from her face. "That's not your lying. That's not." But the screen on Ava's tablet changed. The Skylink corporate logo filled it, followed by a gold digital seal. Beneath it, Ava Robinson, founder and chief executive officer. A soft chime echoed from the intercom. Then the captain's voice, subdued and careful. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your flight deck." We'd like to take a brief moment to confirm that Miss Ava Robinson is indeed on board with us today. Miss Robinson, we're honored to have you. The passengers erupted in whispers, again shock, awe, a little shame. Karen stumbled back another step, stammering, I didn't know. Mia, the young trainee, spoke softly but firmly. You didn't need to know. You just needed to be kind. There, speak. Ava's eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat, gratitude replaced the fury in her gaze. Karen tried one last defense. I was just following protocol. Ava took her stylus, typed slowly on the tablet, and turned it for everyone to see. You used policy as a weapon. The sentence glowed on the screen like a verdict. Layla looked up at her mother, then at the cabin full of watching faces. She says, you judged her because she didn't look rich enough to own what you serve. With you, with Kudmailer. A few passengers clapped hesitant at first, then louder. It wasn't applause for spectacle. It was relief. Justice, finally visible. Karen sank into an empty seat, head in her hands, while the hum of the engines carried a new kind of quiet. Respect. Ava exhaled slowly, then rested her palm over her daughter's heart. Her eyes said what her voice never could. You did well. And for the first time since takeoff, she allowed herself a small, knowing smile, because the truth had just landed long before the plane did. The air inside the cabin changed. That heavy tension that once strangled the space had shifted. Now it felt charged, alive, like static before a storm finally breaks. Karen still sat frozen in the jump seat, pale and small beneath the uniform she had once worn like armor. Every eye in the cabin was on her. Every whisper was a mirror reflecting her own disbelief. Ava didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She lifted her tablet again, typed calmly, and turned it outward. Initiate compliance action. Record everything. Daniel's voice returned through the speaker, clear and surgical. Confirmed. Internal investigation log is active. Miss White's behavior and language have been time-stamped and archived for executive review. Karen shot up from her seat, panic cracking through her composure. You can't just, this isn't fair. I didn't know who she was. Marcades. Mia stepped forward before Ava could reply, her voice steady, carrying the quiet authority that comes from courage, not rank. You didn't have to know, she said. Respect isn't supposed to depend on recognition. The passengers murmured in agreement. Someone whispered, say it again. Another added, that's what she needed to hear. Karen's eyes darted from face to face, searching for someone, anyone to defend her. None did. Daniel continued, Miss Robinson, per Skylink protocol, authority for onboard termination of service misconduct lies with the executive office. Do you wish to proceed? Ava typed again, fingers precise, unshaken. Effective immediately. Suspend flight attendant Karen White. Access revoked. There was no music, no cinematic sting, only the soft mechanical chime of the crew intercom as her badge deactivated. A small red light blinked twice, then died. Karen stared at it like watching her entire career dissolve into air. No, please, this was a misunderstanding. But Ava was already signing to her daughter. Layla translated softly, almost kindly. She says, you didn't just insult her. You embarrassed everyone who works for this airline with integrity. Karen's breath caught. You can't ruin me over one mistake. Mia turned to her, eyes wet but firm. It wasn't one mistake, it was a habit. He, and the dogs, Haven, and the dogs. For a moment, silence again different this time. Not heavy, cleansing. Daniel's voice came once more. Miss Robinson, the board's been notified. You're cleared to conduct post-landing debrief. Crew replacements are standing by. Ava nodded. Then, for the first time since the flight began, she looked out the window. Clouds rolled like quiet witnesses beyond the glass vast, weightless, free. Layla leaned against her shoulder, whispering, It's over, right? Ava smiled faintly, brushing her daughter's hair. She signed, Almost. Karen sat down, trembling. The power she once wielded through policy now felt paper-thin against the immovable grace of the woman she'd tried to humiliate. And in that moment, the lesson became clear not just for her, but for everyone watching. Power doesn't always raise its voice. Sometimes, It just writes your name off the sky. The plane had grown still again. Not the kind of silence that comes from fear, but the quiet that follows revelation, the kind that settles after thunder. Ava Robinson sat upright in her seat, the tablet resting on her lap. The logo of her own company shimmered faintly on the glass proof, not of ego, but of everything she had built from silence. Passengers stared, some in awe, some in shame, some in quiet pride. Mia stood near the aisle, hands trembling but head high. She had never imagined that speaking up could look like this, gentle, measured, unstoppable. Daniel's voice returned through the speaker, softer now. Miss Robinson, corporate compliance has confirmed termination and full documentation. Would you like to issue a statement? Ava looked out the window. The horizon blazed orange with the dying sun, endless and untouchable. She took a slow breath, then began to type. When she turned the tablet toward her daughter, Layla read aloud, small voice steady, clear enough for the cabin to hear. This isn't about punishment. It's about protection. Every person who steps onto a plane deserves respect, not suspicion. Her words echoed through the cabin, quiet yet undeniable. Layla continued reading. Silence can be power, but only when it stands for something larger than pride. Today, it stood for dignity. A few passengers began to clap soft, hesitant. Then, more joined. Soon, the applause spread, not thunderous, but unified. Real. Mia wiped her eyes. The captain's voice came over the intercom once more, humbled. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Skylink Airlines, I apologize for what you witnessed today. We thank Miss Robinson for reminding us what leadership truly looks like. Ava's expression softened. She typed one final line and handed the tablet to her daughter. Layla read it slowly, her voice trembling on the last word. Leadership isn't about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the calm no one can ignore. The cabin went silent again, but this time, it wasn't emptiness. It was reverence. Karen, still seated in the jump seat, kept her head down. She wasn't crying. She was listening for the first time. Ava reached across the aisle and gently touched Mia's hand. The young attendant startled, then smiled shyly. Ava signed a single phrase. Lila translated, "You changed the story." Mia's voice shook. "You changed the system." Outside, the light broke through the cloud's rays, cutting clean across the sky, streaking gold over the wings. The captain's voice came again, softer now. "Miss Robinson, we're beginning our descent. Estimated arrival, 20 minutes. Ava nodded, eyes still fixed on the horizon. She signed to her daughter, "Remember this moment." Layla leaned her head against her mother's shoulder. "I will," she whispered. The passengers began murmuring softly thank yous, apologies, quiet admiration. Phones lowered, heads bowed. No one dared to make noise that could drown the weight of what had just happened. As the wheels touched down, Ava looked at her reflection in the window, half shadow, half light, the same way she'd lived her life. Unseen by many, unstoppable to all. When the seatbelt light blinked off, Daniel's voice came one last time through her tablet. "Miss Robinson, the board sends their regards. You handled this perfectly." She typed a single reply. No, the little girl did. Because in the end, it wasn't power that silenced injustice. It was innocence, refusing to be quiet. And as mother and daughter walked down the aisle, hand in hand, past trembling apologies, past humbled eyes, the cabin rose to its feet, not for a CEO, but for what she represented. Grace, justice, and a new standard for how the sky should feel. Ava didn't turn around. She didn't need to. Behind her, the silence spoke for itself.